Welcome to Talkin' Twins. I'm your host, Liam. This is our Minnesota Twins offseason guide for 2024. We're going to break down the Minnesota Twins offseason and explore what moves the Twins need to make for the 2024 season. We'll discuss free agency, trades, which Twins prospects might be considered untouchable at this point, and we'll get some help identifying some very interesting players that the Twins might want to keep an eye on for trading this offseason. And I could not be more excited than to have our incredibly special guest with us here today. You can hear him during the baseball season as one of the play-by-play voices for the Reno Aces, the AAA affiliate of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's a talented and successful broadcaster, color analyst, podcast host, writer, and he's one half of the youngest broadcast team in AAA baseball. We're talking with the one and only Nash Walker, everybody. Nash, how are you doing, and how was your first season in the announce booth?
Liam, so great. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. It was amazing. It was amazing calling games. That was my first professional baseball season calling games. So special. And luckily, I got to keep up with the Twins throughout. One of the perks is we're on Pacific time, so often the Twins, I'd be able to catch a little bit of the Twins game, watch as many games as possible. As you and I both know, it's hard to miss Twins games, but I certainly found time for them throughout the year.
And Nash, you've got a very unique perspective on a lot of the hidden talents in AAA baseball right now, because you spent your season there with a front row seat to a lot of the top prospects in baseball. So we're going to pick your brain today, but first we have to quickly touch on the Minnesota Twins playoff run in 2023. Nash, you're from Minnesota and you grew up a Twins fan. This past season, the Twins broke their 0-for-18 winless streak. That's 19 years without a playoff win, 21 years without a playoff series win. But luckily, the Twins snapped those two losing streaks. They not only won a playoff game, but they also won a playoff series, sweeping the Toronto Blue Jays 2-0. Nash, I've got to ask, you were only 2 years old the last time the Twins won a playoff series, so you've never seen them win like this before. As a lifelong Twins fan, did it live up to the hype?
You know, Liam, when you said that, I got the chills again. Thinking about them winning the playoff series. Yes, I think I was nervous going in. I think we were all nervous going in. We know we've seen this before, but also I felt this season, it's easy to say now, right? They won the games, but I felt like this was their most complete roster they've had throughout that time. Even if you were to go back in retrospect and look at 19, which was such a special year. And it's one of the big reasons I'm here. 2019, I got so involved in the Twins. That's when I started doing my Twins stuff. And it led to this. It led to this career, honestly, a big part of it. 2019 was special. This team was deeper and more complete than the 2019 team. And back then I would have said something different probably, but in retrospect, in hindsight, I think that was the expectation in some ways. This is the year. This is the rotation. This is the team that's going to do it, especially after June 1st. Pretty gross baseball for a lot of the beginning of the season.
I was there for a lot of it. That was ugly.
Right. You saw that offense at the beginning of the year. But when they clicked in the second half, I remember talking to my parents about it, and my mom was like, they're on an upswing right now. And I said, yes. And we were going into the playoffs, and she was right. And they were on an upswing, and that's not always the case. You don't always win when you're playing well going into the playoffs, but it just felt like they were going to do it, didn't it? And they did, and it was really special.
Yeah, and another thing is the entire world got to see the postseason premiere of the Royce Lewis show. Twins fans already know how clutch he is in big moments. This is the kind of guy that makes lasting memories. Royce running around the bases, flashing the money signs. The buzz of that playoff atmosphere was absolutely electric. Target Field was bursting with excitement. There might have been some better overall teams in the past. We can make arguments for that, but this one, you're right, it felt complete. It felt like they were going somewhere. It felt like there was a plan that was working. The quality of roster depth and their never say die attitude were unreal. My favorite thing about this Twins team was how you couldn't count them out in the later innings. To borrow a line from Carlos Correa, they truly had that dog inside them this year, especially in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. And on that note of the Twins hoping to have future success with this roster, Nash, you're part of the Arizona Diamondbacks system, and as luck would have it, in your very first season with them, the Arizona Diamondbacks went all the way to the World Series, so that's got to be exciting for you as a play-by-play voice and color analyst for the AAA affiliate. You were working very closely with a lot of the players that ended up on their playoff teams. So Nash, what was your biggest takeaway from having a front row seat to all this excitement with the Diamondbacks and essentially watching this team shock the world and become this year's version of a Cinderella team?
we had, I believe it was the World Series roster, maybe the NLCS roster, 16 D-backs who played for the Aces at some point this year, which is a remarkable number with that line blurring between AAA and the bigs. But we had, Longoria, we had Moreno, at some point we had a majority of this roster. It was such a pleasure to get to know some of these guys, to meet all of them, and see how they go about their craft, and see, Evan Longoria, who I grew up watching, and to meet him and watch him in Reno. This experience is unlike anything I've ever been a part of. And this year was just so amazing to watch it come together and watch how the Aces became the Diamondbacks, as it should. A AAA team should feed the big league club. But the way that we did it and the way that this organization did it, it was perfect. It was this seamless transition. You see this great young core coming through. You see the Aces having success. They won the PCL championship last year. We were one win away from getting there again this year. Record-setting year offensively for us here. The D-backs go to the World Series. Everybody's excited. And I got behind it completely. I mean, everybody was along for that ride into October, and I felt emotionally connected to it in a different way as a fan, because I've gotten to know some of these guys, and you really want them to succeed when you get to know them a little bit personally and you watch them professionally.
Exactly. And hoping to follow in Arizona's footsteps next season are the one and only Minnesota Twins. But in order to do the same thing that Arizona just did, the Twins have some areas of concern that they first have to address. So Nash, first up, let's quickly touch on the Minnesota Twins' outgoing free agents. Among them, Sonny Gray, Kenta Maeda, Michael A. Taylor, Tyler Mahle, Emilio Pagan, Joey Gallo, and Donovan Solano. Nash, would you like to see the Twins re-sign any of their outgoing free agents?
I wouldn't mind seeing most of them back, Liam. I think I would let Joey Gallo go at the time. I think a lot of us felt when they signed Joey Gallo, and I said this on my podcast last year, it was in December. I remember my title of the podcast was, "Why did the Twins sign Joey Gallo?" But it was more of, why did they sign Joey Gallo? Not, why did they do this? I thought at the time...
Well, he wasn't right-handed.
Right, exactly. So I thought at the time...
What need was he even filling?
Exactly. I thought Kepler was gone. And I think that was the presumption, that Kepler is going to be traded. And he wasn't. They just kept everybody. And everybody was on the team. I think Gallo will be gone. I thought it was an okay gamble at the time. Wouldn't mind seeing Taylor back to play center field. We're all crossing our fingers hoping that Byron Buxton can play center field next year. They're going to need somebody, and that's just been part of their calculus. It has to be part of their calculus now, and it worked out. It worked out as part of their calculus that Taylor hit 21 homers, and we saw the defense in the playoffs. They don't go to the ALDS without Michael A. Taylor. I would like to see him back. Sonny Gray, I think, was awesome this year, but it's so weird to look at what he did and then see that the Twins were 15-19 in his starts, including the playoffs. And that was a record that was very similar to what they went with Dylan Bundy in 2022. And you think of how differently they pitched, but you can have that record with a run-of-the-mill third or fourth starter. I don't expect, if Sonny Gray pitches like he did, they're going to win more of his starts. That's just baseball. That's like progression to the mean. But you can have a 15-19 record with a one-year deal, of a free agent starting pitcher. So if they lose Sonny Gray, as odd as this is for the team MVP, he's going to finish top 5 in the Cy Young, probably second. Do they lose that many wins going from Sonny Gray to somebody else when they were 4 games below 500 with him? It's not his fault. I'm not saying that at all. They didn't give him run support. It was a huge problem. I would bring him back because if he pitches like that again, they're going to win more games with him on the mound. So I would bring him back. I think the others, like Solano, was great for this team.
Oh,
Solano was awesome for this team. And I was talking to my buddy about Justin Turner, who's a free agent this offseason. He's like, oh, Justin Turner had a really nice year for Boston. And he did. And then you look at Justin Turner compared to Donovan Solano, and they have very similar numbers. I think their OPS plus was almost identical. Wins above replacement, very similar numbers. And you recognize that Solano was huge for this team throughout the year as that right-handed platoon at first base. I think I'd bring him back too. It's a weird thing that they're losing so many free agents, and it doesn't feel the same as when they were losing Correa, right? When they were losing Correa, it was like, oh no, we have to find a way to make up for this production. And with Gray, I feel differently, but I would be excited to bring him back. Everybody else I could see, but at the same time, I think you can find other options. Maybe guys who fit the roster a little bit better than a Gallo or a Taylor, like Kevin Kiermaier, who they have reported interest in, I think would be really intriguing for this team.
If I could sum up Sonny Gray, I would say he's a great Minnesota Twin. He was the right fit at the right time. And one thing I noticed during games were constant cutaways to the dugout, and you'd see Sonny Gray sitting with and surrounded by the likes of Joe Ryan, Louis Varland, Bailey Ober, Pablo Lopez. Basically any pitchers that were in the dugout at the time were always learning from Sonny, explaining different grips or techniques. And in particular, Sonny and Joe Ryan were constantly glued at the hip. Joe Ryan was constantly picking his brain. So I wonder if the Twins do lose Sonny Gray, are they losing more than just a great starting pitcher? Are they also losing a leader and a mentor on the team? Which begs the big question, how much influence did Sonny Gray have on the pitching staff and their success in 2023? We don't have the answer to that right now. And we're not going to find out until next year if Sonny Gray does not return to the Twins. So is that going to be a factor going forward? That Sonny Gray's impact on the Twins was actually greater than any of us realized it at the time?
I think he was great. I think that trade looks phenomenal. I mean, Chase Petty, we'll see. We'll see on Chase Petty. We don't know what Chase Petty's going to be. But it's one of those, I can say this now, I'm not going to care what Chase Petty does because I know that Sonny Gray was so good for this team. They don't beat the Blue Jays without Sonny Gray, most likely. You know, and he did struggle in the ALDS. I think people have recency bias too, and they're maybe not going to be upset that he's gone because they remember Jose Abreu. It felt like that swing ended their season in a lot of ways. So, and they know that Gray was on the mound. It's some recency bias in there, but he was so good for them for 2 years. And I love that you brought that up, Liam. I think that's so true that every time they cut, it was Joe. I agree. It was often with Joe. And I would say at the beginning of 22, when it was a makeshift rotation, it was not the rotation that they had this year when it was Archer and Bundy and those guys. They did the best they could for the first couple months, but they were rallying around each other. They were watching each other's bullpens. They were talking through things. And I think Gray was at the forefront of that. And then that pickoff with Carlos in the playoffs, those two, that I just watched that moment and I thought to myself, like, these are the leaders of this team. These are, and Byron, I think when he's healthy is definitely part of that on the field. You just don't see it because he hasn't been on the field. But I think Sonny and Carlos, when they turned that pick off, I felt like this was like a deep veteran team. And Sonny was a major part of that feeling that I had, that this was a seasoned team that could make a run as soon as they had that pickoff play. So I do agree. I think they'll be losing that potentially. You have to weigh all those factors. I think it comes down to money, as it often does. Like, what does he get? Does he get a 4-year deal? Does he get 3 for 75? Does he get 3 for 80? The Cardinals, we know, are pitching hungry. There's so many teams who could use Sonny Gray, which tells you the Twins could use him too. A lot. I mean, you could point out 10 to 15 clubs who could vie for Sonny Gray this offseason. He's going to be a rich man.
I agree. It would be great to have Sonny back for another 2 to 3 years, possibly a fourth. I think it's going to take 4 years to get him. And as you just described, it's not really a doom and gloom situation. We like Sonny. If he leaves, it's sort of a situation of don't be sad that it's over, be glad that it happened. And if he does leave, the Twins still get a decent first-round compensatory pick at the end of the first round. And that's after 2 awesome years of Sonny Gray. So overall, I think the Twins win on this one.
Which would be like, I think it's like 15 picks after where they took Petty. Something in that range. So it's pretty good stuff.
Now I just want to quickly touch on Tyler Mahle. I think there's a lot more to give there. He was an effective starting pitcher when healthy, and as we mentioned, he had great peripherals with the Reds before he came to the Twins, so it was a good buy low opportunity for the Twins at the time.
I really like that trade. I know it's kind of a hot take now. At the time.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm not too concerned with what they gave up for Mahle, because at the time of the deal, it seemed like a fair deal. At the time, you trade what you need to, and the Twins did.
Yes.
So I'm thinking maybe a 2 or 3 year deal with an option mixed in. That might work for Mahle and the Twins.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. I still like him. I love the split. I agree with their assessment. I think they had an assessment that he could potentially do what Pablo did, which is let's add a breaking ball that's better than what he currently has as an arsenal. And that's going to completely unlock another level to this guy. And that's what we saw with Pablo this year. I like the process. And you heard Derek say that. Falvey said that not long ago. He's like, I liked our process there. I think that was earlier this season. And I would agree. Like, at the time, I liked the process. He was my number 1 trade target at the time for the Twins. I was pumped when they got him. Totally. I really, really liked it. And it is what it is. Sometimes you hit them, sometimes you don't. They've won big on some trades. They've lost big on some trades. That's ball.
Well said. Now we're going to play a little bit of a game called Keep or Trade. The Twins recently exercised their 2024 options on outfielder Max Kepler and second baseman Jorge Polanco. This coming year, Max Kepler will earn $10 million, Polanco will be $10.5 million, and he also has another option on his contract for next year at $12 million. As we just saw this past season, both players outperform their salaries. One would assume that there's more interest in them this year than there was last winter. And according to Bob Nightingale of USA Today, the Twins are looking to trade their hitting depth for pitching this winter. According to John Morosi of MLB Network, GMs are telling him that Max Kepler and Jorge Polanco already have a lot of value this winter on the trade market. So Nash, should the Minnesota Twins keep or trade Max Kepler?
Would have been an easy decision for me in May, Liam. It's a little bit harder now. He was awesome in the second half. That was, if you look at, I remember I tweeted out that his numbers, this was in, I think in early September, maybe late August, were almost identical to 2019. And we look at 2019 as this monster breakout year. We were all so excited about Max Kepler, hit 36 home runs. He's leading off. He was dominant for the Twins in 2019. You could argue he was the team MVP for a team that won 101 games. And then he put up really similar numbers this year at the plate. You look at like weighted runs created plus and other things, very similar. I think I would bring him back to play right field. There's some opportunity cost involved in that where you could fill his spot with somebody with maybe more upside at this point. But I feel like there's upside on this roster. You have Royce Lewis, who's potentially a 6-7 win player. I think we saw flashes of that. You got Carlos, who's been a 7-win player before. I guess I'm giving it away. You'd have Polo at second base as well. I would keep this depth intact. I think it worked. I think it worked to keep this depth. You could argue that they need to go trade for a starter. Maybe I would shy and go toward the system for that more than I would at the major league level, because I like what Kepler did in the second half. I think he can be a 3-win player next year. And I think Polo as well. He's one of my favorite Twins, and he's definitely an underrated Twin. And we saw him down the stretch hit really well. The legs have been a problem. Staying healthy has been a problem. But if he's healthy, he's one of the best second basemen in baseball at the plate. So I would honestly keep them both, Liam, I think.
So on the flip side of what Nash is saying here, this also might be a good sell high opportunity for the Twins. Kepler had a hot second half, which was incredible, but at the same time are also very familiar with the bad version of Kepler and how draining that is. And we don't know what will be the case next year. That could happen again. And if it does, then Twins fans will definitely revolt against the team and the team's front office, saying, you had an opportunity to trade Max Kepler while his value was high, and you passed on the opportunity, and now we're getting nothing left for him when he becomes a free agent at the end of the year. We do expect the Twins to lose Sonny Gray, so there's going to be a gaping hole in their rotation right now. The good news is there are plenty of attractive options to trade for, and teams are looking to make moves this winter. One such opportunity exists with the Seattle Mariners. They have a need at second base and also in the outfield. Taking a quick look at the Mariners, they are loaded with starting pitching. And Logan Gilbert jumps off the page to me. Next year, he'll be 26 years old. He's a free agent in 2028, so the Twins would be receiving 4 years of control. This past season, he had a 3.73 ERA, and his peripheral stats were consistent with that as well. On top of that, his K per 9 was just a smidge under 9, and his walks per 9 were only 1.7. To put that in context, Logan Gilbert of the Mariners had the 6th lowest walk rate in baseball. Bailey Ober was 10th, Garrett Cole was 15th, and Pablo Lopez was 19th overall. So that tells you a little bit about what the Twins would be receiving with Logan Gilbert. He's ready-made for the Twins system. And he's Mr. Durable. In 2021, when he was called up to the majors, he started 24 games. The next 2 seasons, in 2022 and 2023, 32 games apiece. If the Mariners are looking to move Logan Gilbert, then in my opinion, he has to become one of the Twins' top offseason targets. Nash, how would you feel about the Twins making a deal for a starter like Logan Gilbert and trading away some of their hitting depth in order to do so?
Yeah, interestingly, the Twins have traded with a lot of teams. If you look around the league, I remember I did this when I was hosting Locked On Twins, checking teams off now. They've traded with a lot of teams this regime. I don't think they've made a trade with the Mariners, if I'm not mistaken, which is interesting because Jerry DiPoto is so active, and he's going to trade somebody. They're going to trade somebody this offseason. Yeah, I like Logan Gilbert. I think at times the fastball is not as effective as you would think it would be for him. And if you're going to make that trade, I think there's hope like there was for Pablo. When they made that trade for Pablo, I think there was an underlying we have something that we're going to do to unlock another level to Pablo Lopez, and we think that's what makes this trade worth it for us. It's not who he is today, which is a very good starting pitcher like Logan Gilbert is. It's we see something that we want to take further in him, and we're going to get excess value on this trade because of that reason. And then they extended him, and that gave him excess value too. You're hoping into the future. I think the same has to be true for Gilbert. He is a former top prospect. He's a good pitcher now. I think you have to feel there's more. There's something you could do with him that you see that the Mariners haven't done or that hasn't clicked with him in Seattle, that you can take him to that next level, to that Pablo level. Because to me, I think he's on that 2-3 line. And I would argue Pablo's probably on that 2-3 line last year, and now is more on the 1-2 line. I would hope that there would be something further if you're going to trade from the major league roster, good productive players who can help you win in the playoffs.
So next, let's jump over to first base and talk about the situation there. It feels completely up in the air right now. The internal options for the Twins right now at first base include Alex Kirilloff as the incumbent, but he's questionable right now after his offseason right shoulder surgery. Jose Miranda, also another option at first base, but still questionable because his entire season was a write-off due to once again shoulder injuries. And then just poor performance overall as well. Eddie Julian, he's possible, but he shouldn't be plan A, and I think we all agree on that. And then the situation goes from bad to worse because their main safety net at first base this past season was Donovan Solano, who's now a free agent, and he led the team in starts at first base. So Nash, how do you feel about the Twins situation at first base?
I'll always be a believer in Alex Kirilloff, Liam. I'll always believe in the bat, and he was a special prospect. He was a special prospect coming through the system with him and Royce, and he wasn't that far behind Royce. There were times where, experts were ranking Alex Kirilloff ahead of Royce Lewis, and part of that was the knee surgeries and Royce struggling in 2019 in the minors, but it also was just giving credence to how good Alex was in the minors, and his hit tool is just remarkable. And then we saw in 2021, he had that stretch. He had a stretch in 2021. He was so good. I remember being at Target Field. It was right before he slid into second, hurt his wrist. He had this stretch of 10 to 15 games where he was dominant. And then out of the All-Star break this year, same thing. It was a stretch
you
of 10
called
to
that too.
Games. I did
the All-Star break. That was you who was calling
my...
him, saying that he was going to go off on a big power surge after the All-Star break, and he did. You're right. You're like, if anything happens in the second half, it's going to be Alex Kirilloff going off with a power streak, and that's exactly what he did.
I also said things would get wild at the deadline, and maybe the wildest thing that could have happened is doing nothing. Either way, he was super good. He was super good after the All-Star break. I'll always be a believer in him. I think when he's healthy, I think he's going to hit. It's just, like you said, it's a question mark because we don't know if he's going to be healthy. At the bare minimum, they need a right-handed first baseman, and that could be Jose Miranda if they feel he's healthy. And in spring training, he had a great spring training this year, and we don't know how much the shoulder impacted him at the plate this year at third base. We don't know. It's possible that it hindered him completely at the plate because remember how good he was. He was so good. It could be him. They could view him as being a viable option as their platoon first baseman, and I wouldn't be against that because you also look at his track record. He destroyed lefties in the minors in 2021. It was like laughable. If you look at his splits in 2021, and then he hit lefties again in the majors in 2022. I believe he's going to hit lefties if he's healthy. It's a big if for a lot of this roster a lot of the time, but I would be okay with that if they were buying back into him, realizing he's down but not out, and buying back into him as a platoon option at first base. I think I'd be okay with that. They need somebody to do it though at the bare minimum. I could also see the argument, let's get a big first base bat, and if Alex turns out to be healthy and hitting, then he can play left field, or we'll find a way to get him in the lineup. Let's get somebody who can fill first every single day. We don't have to platoon them. We don't take them out of the lineup. Could see that too. I think they have options there. It's a critical position. You got to hit. You got to hit at first base. It's a critical position. I think it's one of the biggest positions of questions in this offseason. For me, the number one priority would be let's get a right-handed bat who can hit left-handed pitching. That's the basement for me. But you could talk me into their biggest addition should be at first base. I could see that.
Yeah, last year you were talking about Alex Kirilloff on an episode of Locked On Twins, and I believe you said, we've done it before, it didn't work, let's not do it again. And here we are again, having the same conversation about Alex Kirilloff all over again.
You've done it before. It didn't work. Let's not do it again. That might be my motto for the Twins this offseason. We've done it before. It didn't work. Let's not do it again.
Are there any first basemen who stand out to you as fits for the Twins?
Definitely. I think at the deadline, I thought that was a possibility. I thought that was if they're going to add a big bat, I think it made a lot of sense to do at first base. At the time, Paul Goldschmidt, Pete Alonso, those were the two we were looking at the trade deadline. I don't think anything's changed on that front. You got hoops you got to jump through with Goldie. Does he want out of St. Louis? Is he going to waive a no trade to come to Minnesota? You could argue he would. I think a team that will be favored heavily to go back to the playoffs, and he's 36 years old. He took a step back in 2023. He was not the same MVP Paul Goldschmidt. He's still a top, 6 to 10 first baseman in the big leagues. You could argue he was still top 5, but he took a step back. So I would think that when you make that move, you would want him and you believe that he's going to get back to that 140, 150 OPS plus, not 110, 120, because Donovan Solano, I think, was just at 118, and you got him for $2 million. And if you're trading for Paul Goldschmidt, you're adding $26 million to your books, and you're probably going to have to trade to pry him away from St. Louis, because I think they believe that they're going to compete next year and they're going to be active in the free agent market. And if they're going to compete, they're going to need Paul Goldschmidt. So you're going to have to entice him away from that situation, entice the team to move him away. So you have to weigh all of those things, right? And Pete Alonso, I think he's going to get traded this offseason. We'll see where. I think he's got 2 years of team control. I really like Alonso. The Twins struck out. I don't know if you know, but the Twins struck out a lot last year. I'm talking to the viewer. Liam knows. He went to a lot of games. The Twins struck out a lot last year. Pete Alonso, he strikes out a lot too. I personally, if he's hitting 50 home runs, I don't care if he strikes out 280 times. Personally, that's just my personal opinion, but he's got to hit 50 homers. It's that fine line. It's a fine line that you find that we've seen with guys like Miguel Sano in the past. It's okay if they strike out 30-35% of the time, but they need to, when they do hit the ball, they need to hit the ball out of the park or into the gaps, and they need to produce runs. And we know that line is tough to toe sometimes. I like both of those guys, certainly. I know Rhys Hoskins, I think MLB Trade Rumors projected him to the Twins. Really like him, but he's coming off an ACL. That's part of the equation. With everybody, there's things you have to factor into this. I don't think we've seen the Mets pay down contracts to get bigger prospects. Like, would they pay down Alonso's arbitration number to try to get a top 3 prospect from the Twins? You could see them trying to do something like that. So you have to weigh all of the prices and weigh the opportunity cost as well. If maybe Alex Kirilloff still is that guy, we don't know. We're still trying to figure that out, and they've certainly invested in him. So there's options out there, both on the free agent market and via trade. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I think if I were to ask you, what do you think? I think the biggest question is, where do you think the biggest addition is going to come from? That's the question for the offseason, and I'm curious if you think it's first base.
I think it has to be. I think it has to be first base. Look at the way that the season ended last time. Kirilloff not even diving for balls. Donovan Solano, of all people, having to be the guy to do that to save games. Can't get in that situation again next year. Rhys Hoskins, another right-handed hitter. I think he's going to be a negative for the Twins if they do sign him. Then there's Pete Alonso, another guy being shopped around as possibly being available this winter. And then the question is, do the Twins have enough to get Pete Alonso? One guy that really stands out to me is someone that you might be familiar with, Nash, as he played in the AAA all season long, came up for little stints with the Dodgers. His name is Michael Busch. He's 26 years old. He's a top 50 prospect right now, rated number 44 on MLB Pipeline. He was the 2023 MVP for the Pacific Coast League. And the Dodgers have had opportunities to play him this year, but they chose not to. And Twins fans might really like this part. He's also Minnesota born and raised. Primarily a second baseman, his long-term future is in first base or corner outfield, and so towards the end of this year, the Dodgers jumped right to it. They just moved him to first base, and that's where he finished the season off. So I'm wondering if this is another possible opportunity where the Twins take Jorge Polanco or Max Kepler and flip him for someone like Michael Busch. Even though he's left-handed, I'm not too concerned about that. But you saw him up close, so what's your take on Michael Busch, Nash?
Oh, so good. Yeah. So, I mean, he was a series breaker this year. We had the 6-game series at AAA. He was a series breaker. He would come in and blow the whole thing up. It was like, this this ain't happening because of Michael Busch. And they were very good this year. Oklahoma City was very good, especially in the first half. He was in the heart of that. He's at the plate, extremely calm, great eye. And when he does get pitches to hit, he doesn't miss pitches to hit. He was, as you said, the PCL MVP. He was so good this year. Blocked a little bit by the Dodgers because they had Muncy at third base, and he got some opportunities, but I think deserving of a run in the majors. And he, in every sense, I would say, was a top 3 hitter in the PCL this year. And the Aces had some great hitters too. I would argue 2 of them are the Aces and the other is Michael Busch, because he was a series breaker through and through. Do you have good recognition at the plate? Like, it's such a key. If you're chasing in the minors, you're probably going to chase even more in the majors. The stuff is better. Everything's better. The location's better. They're going to pick you apart. He has such a good eye at the plate. And I think he's 26 now. He has that minor league experience. He's got the power to all fields. He draws walks. He's an all-around very good left-handed hitter from everything I've seen at this level. He's everything you want to see out of a prospect.
And now let's jump over to center field. The internal options on the Twins right now are Byron Buxton, Willie Castro, and in AAA, Austin Martin. We'll touch on trades in a moment, but first, Nash, are there any free agent center fielders who you've got an eye on right now?
I would like to see a left-handed center fielder if it's possible next year. I think I'm going to cling to the hope that Byron can play some center field next year. And if he's doing so, that he's playing against left-handed pitching, and then maybe he can DH against righties, or you mix and match and give him a day off. Julian DHs. You can get creative with all of that. I think I'm hoping to see a left-handed center fielder next year. They were really left-handed this year, and they struggled against left-handed pitching. I just think it's more of a true platoon partnership. Now, if you don't think Byron can play center at all next year, you feel like that's not going to happen, he's going to DH all of 2024, then I'm open to, the center fielder being right-handed. I just think it makes more sense if you feel like Buxton is going to play center in any capacity next year. Let's get a left-handed center fielder. And they were linked to Kevin Kiermaier this week. I think it was Nightingale who linked those two. Probably the most natural fit. And then if you look back, like when Jake Odorizzi pitched for the Twins, and he pitched for the Rays, of course, before, they asked him, who do you think is a better defensive center fielder, Kevin Kiermaier or Byron Buxton? It was a variation of that question. He's like, it's so hard to say. And he said something along the lines of that they're the best. And they have been 2 of the best for the past decade in center field. So it would be really fun from a baseball fan's perspective to watch that. If we're able to see that, those 2 defensively in center would be a treat.
But let's talk about trades. Nash, are there any outfielders who stood out to you in AAA?
Definitely. We had a great group of outfielders. The Diamondbacks have a system that's deep, full of good young outfielders. And what sticks out is defensively. And you saw that in the playoffs in that World Series run with Alek Thomas. That was probably the strength of the team, was just the depth in that outfield this year. And it felt like whoever got sent down raked for us. And whoever got, as soon as they got sent back down, they were our best player. That's what it felt like throughout this season. So that speaks to the depth in that outfield. I would say the 3 best hitters I saw in the PCL this year were Michael Busch, Dominic Canzone, and Kyle Lewis. 2 of them were aces. Canzone traded to Seattle at the deadline in that Paul Sewald deal. But Kyle, I didn't have words for him by the end of the season because he was so automatic at the plate. And something I love about him, we talked to him last year, and he would say, it depends on the pitcher. It depends. Like, sometimes you take your walks. Sometimes you got to go to the opposite field. Sometimes, and this is a guy with huge power. He was on pace, I think, for 50 homers if he were to play a full season with us this year. But he draws walks. He takes what the pitcher gives him. He has got an advanced approach at the plate. We're talking about the 2020 American League Rookie of the Year, an uber talented player who was one of the best players in the PCL, one of the best hitters definitely in the PCL, and just so fun to watch this year. Crushed everybody. You could throw with your foot. Kyle Lewis was hitting it 500 feet deep to left field. He was unconsciously good for us.
Now the big question is, can he play center field, or is he destined for left field or DH?
He DH'd a lot for us this year. I don't know for sure, what the future holds in the outfield. Played left field with us. I don't think he got a start in center. Played left field when he did play in the grass for us.
There's a lot to like about Kyle Lewis. He excels when he has regular playing time, and it's frustrating to watch him blocked in any system, anywhere. Power bat, he's athletic, he's a right-handed hitter, he smashes the ball. He was the 11th overall pick in 2016 by Seattle. He's only owed $1.6 million next season as well, so that's cheap power production. We'll wait and see what happens with Kyle Lewis. Hopefully he gets his opportunity in Arizona. If not, then if they're looking to trade him, Minnesota should be listening. Now let's talk about some Twins untouchables. Rumor has it the Twins might be looking to trade away some of their hitting depth for pitching. We've touched on some of the major league pieces so far, but the Twins might trade away some prospects as well. So we've got the list of the top 10 prospects for the Twins on the screen right now, led by Walker Jenkins, Brooks Lee, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Marco Raya, and more. Nash, from this list, should any of the Twins prospects currently be considered untouchable?
I don't tend to use that word because if you were to get the right offer, you trade whoever, right? That's how I kind of think of it. My general feeling on that is superstar upside. To me, you're more scared to trade anytime. Like, I would be scared to trade guys who I think could potentially be superstars. Fernando Tatis Jr., I always think back to that deal on the White Sox and like how things may have been different had he, he's made some mistakes along the way, but had he still been a White Sox, like how would that have impacted the division and other decisions they made? Like it could have changed everything over the last 5 years and into the future. It really was that earth shattering. I think Emmanuel Rodriguez has superstar level upside. I think when I saw the report that they could trade position player depth, I thought of it like I think you did, Liam. That's going to come from the major league roster, but it's a possibility that they do trade from their system of prospects as well. One thing we've learned about this front office is I don't think they have anybody who they think of in that way. Like, they have traded fan favorites. They flipped this roster post lockout. That roster flipping, I had so much fun doing the podcast because the amount of moves, I would say nobody's been more active than the Twins post lockout. From the end of the lockout until now, in terms of transactions, trades, free agency, no one's been more active than the Twins. They flipped their roster in a lot of ways. So I could see them doing anything. I don't necessarily have, like, if you were to show me deals, I would like to see deals before I would say anybody's untouchable, if that makes sense. I think they are in a position where they're going to be favored to win the division. I think the goal this year is, how do we get a bye in the first round? Let's not play in that wild card round. We saw anything can happen in that wild card round. Let's not play in that round. Let's try to get a bye and win the division, get the 1 or the 2 seed, and not think about that. So if you feel like you can add a 5 or 6 win player to this team who's under team control for even 1 year or 2 years, you can probably convince me to add that player, because I do believe that they're in a position, they have a good roster on hand with good young players who are not making a lot in the pre-arbitration process. Now is probably the time in this year specifically where you can add that premium salary. I don't know about the TV deal. I don't know about all that, but I think this is a time when you push a little bit after what just happened. And in the playoffs with them winning and the excitement around the team, you saw the crowds. You were there. It was amazing. It was so fun to see. I've never seen that in my lifetime. So you can build on that, continue to push in that direction. I think, yeah, I'd be open to any of it, really, if it helps this team. If it's somebody who's a really impact player for this team and it pushes you even further, I'm on board.
The other guys at the top of the list, Walker Jenkins, I mean, pretty much Captain America. There's nothing this guy can't do. He's an electric baseball player. I can't wait to see him in a Twins uniform. And then Brooks Lee. He's so close to the majors right now that I believe that he's part of the Twins' 2024 plans as it is, regardless of the trades they're going to pull off this season. He's a switch hitter. He has among the best contact skills in the minors. He's a quality shortstop, so that means he can also play at third base and second. Third base might even be his best option long term. According to Jonathan Mayo at MLB.com, he's got Gold Glove potential at third. And also considering the injury history of both Correa and Royce Lewis, it's great to have a high upside prospect like Brooks Lee still around who's ready or near ready for MLB. And we're about to find out very soon. Nash, it's been a very informative discussion with you today. We've explored what the Twins' options are with both Jorge Polanco and Max Kepler. We highlighted some options for the Twins to consider at both first base and center field. And we're both hoping that some of the high-end prospects of the Twins system stick around long enough that they can contribute to the next playoff winners. Any final thoughts, Nash?
Liam, you do a fantastic job, and I agree. I think we're going to have every single year. I always say, like, oh, I wonder if they're going to do anything this year. I wonder what's going to happen. And then something crazy always happens, right? They always do something that knocks your socks off. And I think this offseason will be the same. I would say the only offseason where that didn't happen as much, but still, like, to get Nelly back in 2021 and to, at the time, sign Alexander Colomé and do what they did, I felt like they were building toward a division title. We don't have to talk about 2021. It's in the rear view. That's the one offseason where I would say it was more predictable, but that's not even the word. It was more not crazy. the post-lockout offseason, last offseason, we saw them do some wild things, and we've seen that. I mean, we've seen that throughout. So I think it's going to be another crazy offseason, Liam. I think we've seen in the past what this front office has done. They've always surprised us. There's always something that comes through that I mean, maybe Joey Gallo was the one last year that was the most surprising, because there was a lot of Pablo chatter and Pablo for Louis chatter throughout the offseason, and then Gallo came through. I'm expecting things like that again. And, I love the games, and I love watching, and I love the summer so much. I also love the offseason. I think it's so fun to see these rosters take shape and people debate whether they think this roster is better than this one, and which roster is going to last. And I'm looking forward to a winter full of that.
Totally agree. If you want more of Nash's valuable insight, you can follow him on Twitter at Nash Walker 9. In the video description below, you'll also find a link to his work at Twins Daily, and during the baseball season, you can listen to Nash give play-by-play and color analysis for the Reno Aces. Nash, congratulations on a successful first season with the Aces and for chasing down your dreams and making them a reality. Thanks for sharing your insight with us. The door is always open, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Liam.
In the meantime, stay tuned. We have more MLB and Twins-related off-season content and analysis coming your way. Thanks for watching, and go Twins! My name is Liam. You can follow me on Twitter at Talkin' Twins and on Instagram at Talkin' Twins TV. To follow along with our MLB off-season content, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button. Until next time, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, have a great day, and go Twins!